As I surf the internet, I see tons of websites and videos about creation science and evolution, New Age philosophy, and this thing called the New World Order. This end-all be-all agenda of a world government that encompasses pretty much every conspiracy subject you can find, however phony or legitimate. But I still don't see people going quite far enough with the research and making the necessary connections between the different subjects to determine an ultimate motive. And this is what I will try and do with this video. I don't believe that the New World Order, as it's called, is as easy a task to accomplish as men like Alex Jones and other man-centered, secular-based radio stations would like us to believe. So my stance on the New World Order is very simple. It is that from a Christian's perspective, because after years of research, I've come to the conclusion that a truly global government is not possible unless future events happen the way the Bible says it will happen. There are too many differences between the nations and cultures, too much conflict for them to suddenly have a change of heart and unify under some globalized power structure. But with that said though, there are some similarities that can be used to unify the world. And what is probably the most pervasive of all ancient beliefs is what we call today evolution. And it's exactly this that I want to discuss in relation to how the Antichrist will be presented to the world. As you all know, the Bible talks about the son of perdition and his representatives, the false prophet, coming on the scene with all power of lying signs and wonders, performing miracles around the world until they gather a large enough following that the world will eventually come to believe that he is a literal God in the flesh. But what is never discussed is the role the media and academic establishment will play in this scheme. How will this man of sin and his amazing feats be sold to the world? We'll look at entertainment fiction, and we have characters like Superman and Jedi, and we see that they are nothing more than people with the ability to levitate like a witch, with superhuman strength like Samson or any of the demon-possessed people mentioned in the Bible. But to the world with this belief in evolution that claims that what we experience with the five senses or can see through a microscope is all there is or ever will be, it won't be the powers of heaven or devils or anything supernatural as a cause of their power. This will be explained to the public using some silly scientific babblings akin to how the Force was explained by Qui-Gon Jinn from Star Wars Episode 1.
Master, what are midichlorians?
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
They live inside me.
Inside your cells, yes. And we are symbionts with them.
Symbionts?
Life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without the midichlorians, life could not exist, and we would have no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force.
The Force?
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
I call upon the spirit of autumn, the spirit of water, of the ebb and flow of emotion, of open seas and running streams, of cleansing rain, spirit of the evening sun, of twilight and of autumn. I call upon the spirit of winter, the spirit of earth, the womb of creation, of night and the snows of winter, deep roots and ancient stones. I call upon the spirit of spring, the spirit of air, the breath of life, of sunrise and of new life and new growth. I call upon the spirit of summer, the spirit of fire, of energy and of passion, the spirit of the noonday sun, the heat of summer, vitality and abundance. My friends, let the festival commence.
Now, a witch would love movies like Star Wars because the way the Force was explained throughout the series is a shining example of how witches describe the relationship they have with the natural elements from which they claim they derive their power, which are the elements of earth, fire, air, and water. The gathering of these elements conjures another mystical element they often refer to as the ether, or akasha as written in the Sanskrit language, which can then be harnessed for one's own purpose. In theosophy and pagan religions such as Hinduism, This is the first physical element to exist that is the very substance of the universe and of all living things, according to them. Some refer to it as spirits, but even then, you can see how even witchcraft is given a sort of materialistic or scientific explanation. This will be important later because as time goes along, there will be a concerted effort to displace what we know of as the supernatural with the natural. It is important to point out the apparently little-known fact that what is taught in the schools as evolution is actually nothing more than the beliefs of some of the oldest religions on the planet, given the veneer of science. Once upon a time, life began with nothing but a tiny seed. As this seed grew, it gave rise to a small golden egg which split open, resulting in an explosion of intense heat, or austerity. From this continually expanding body of heat came primal matter, giving rise to the elements. The mixing of these elements in a chaotic primordial sea and the subsequent lightning strikes and volcanic activity allowed for the spontaneous formation of the first primitive forms of life. The first incarnation being Pagan the fish, then Leonardo the turtle, which represents the first amphibian, then Groot the raccoon, which represents the first land-born species, then King Kong sapien, which represents the first semi-human primates, and finally we have King Thorn, which represents the first intelligent, fully formed human. In a nutshell, this is evolution in its most primitive form, in my own words, a lot inspired by ancient Hindu creation stories, and by the 10 incarnations of the Hindu god Vishnu, whose starting avatar was the lowest form of water-based life, and its last avatar being an enlightened godlike spirit being. Now replace the fanciful religious terminology with your own Latin-sounding terms, and you'll realize that what is taught in the holy books of academia as science is actually quite simply the old pagan creation accounts, or Mystery Babylon, hiding in plain sight. You will never see this taught in academia, nor will you ever see this pointed out in the campus debates between creationists and evolutionists, because they want to keep up the illusion of a conflict between religion and science. So just like they spun off old pagan beliefs about the origins of life as scientific under the guise of evolution, the next step will be to spin off sorcery or the occult as scientific. The New Age movement itself is based squarely on pantheistic evolution, and they have been selling the occult as scientific since its inception. So just like God fashioned Adam from the dust of the earth and breathed spirit into him, the Antichrist and the false prophet will do the same, as stated in Revelations chapter 13, verses 14 through 15. He will not only come on the scene mimicking every miracle Jesus performed, but his miracles would also likely be an attempt to mimic the theory of evolution. He will levitate in the air, walk on water, turn rocks into fish, fish into amphibians, amphibians into reptiles, reptiles into birds and mammals. And he will likely even take that mammal in his genetic makeup and fashion it into his own likeness and fill it with the spirit of devils. And when the world sees these miracles, with his belief in evolution, Moses turning a stick into a snake will be akin to turning a primate into a human. Now the Bible states that the Antichrist will honor this thing called the God of Forces. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 2 states that Satan is the prince of the power of the air, which is an elemental force in witchcraft, as I stated earlier. In Revelations chapter 13 verses 2 and 4, Satan is also referred to as the dragon that the world is worshipping, who gives the Antichrist his power and authority. So it is no wonder why the Antichrist honors him with gold and silver as the God of Forces. Daniel 11 verses 36 through 39 states that this king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper until the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of Forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain." Unquote. By the end of this video, you will get a clear understanding of how the world will be deceived into worshiping Satan. As is the case in witchcraft and Hinduism, the New Age movement has a similar concept of the Force. They refer to it by different names like universal consciousness, the creative principle, the essence, the divine vibration, the divine spark, etc. They believe there is an energy that flows through all things, which they believe is God, that holds the universe together and is in man as well, which is the basis for pantheism. According to them, this energy can be channeled for humanity's own use. As has been pointed out many times, the New Age movement is a conglomeration of pretty much every pagan doctrine that have their roots in the old mystery Babylonian religion that is based on the deification of Nimrod, Queen Semiramis, and Tammuz as forces of nature. In a nutshell, Nimrod was deified as the incarnation of the sun, Semiramis, the moon goddess, also referred to often as the Queen of Heaven, and Tammuz as the reincarnation of Nimrod. As time goes along, you're going to start seeing New Age mysticism being promoted more often as scientific in many different ways by academia in the mainstream media. One way I highly suspect New Age mysticism will be promoted is through this theory called dark matter. Now, this is something that was made up as a just-so story solely to prop up the Big Bang Theory, as they realized how inconsistent their own cosmological models concerning the beginning of the universe and its evolution really are. It's because of this reason that many scientists have come forward, signing an open letter on their stance against the Big Bang Theory. The first paragraph in the letter states that the Big Bang today relies on a growing number of hypothetical entities. Things we have never observed, inflation, dark matter, and dark energy are the most prominent examples. Without them, there will be a fatal contradiction between the observations made by astronomers and the predictions of the Big Bang Theory. In no other field of physics will this continual recourse to new hypothetical objects be accepted as a way of bridging the gap between theory and observations. It would, at the least, raise serious questions about the validity of the underlying theory, unquote. Now, there are two reasons why dark matter is central to the subject of this video. Number one, it is quickly being widely accepted by the world as the reason the universe exists. And number two, it has been pointed out many times its similarity to the fictional midichlorians or the Force in Star Wars. The following article, titled Dark Matter Apparently is Midichlorians, states that dark matter, to reinterpret Obi-Wan Kenobi, surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. At least that's what a new scientific study seems to show. Dark matter appears to stretch well beyond the visible limits of galaxies, flowing through and filling even the vast, previously thought empty space between galaxies. The researchers, led by Shogo Masaki of Nagoya University, used computer simulations to model how dark matter behaves over time as it helps form galaxies, and found that while it's concentrated in and around galaxies, it doesn't fade away into nothing with distance. It does get thinner, but still exists to a measurable degree well outside of galaxies. The model structures they found is actually quite lovely. Dark matter was discovered a long time ago, when it was found that galaxies that live in clusters were moving way too fast to be held by the cluster gravity. They should just simply shoot away, and clusters would essentially evaporate. This implies that clusters of galaxies were either very young and hadn't had time to dissolve, which we knew wasn't true. They're clearly old, or there must be a lot more gravity holding them together. We can add up all the light from the stars in the galaxies and estimate their total mass, but what you get is only about 5 to 10% of the mass needed to hold clusters together. So most of the mass making up the clusters must be dark, otherwise we'd see it, unquote. In other words, real scientific observations and not computer models have shown that clusters of galaxies were very young because they hadn't had time to dissolve, which is something that creation scientists have been saying for years. But at the same time, this simply just cannot be true because it doesn't fit into their preconceived notions of a Big Bang that claims the universe to be far older. And these creatures really want us to continue to believe that they come to these conclusions by objective reasoning. Yet again, we see entertainment media, science fiction, being included into discussion of what is called established science. This is the reason why I titled this video The Antichrist and the media's role in promoting him. Anyone dismissing the notion that media pieces like Star Wars hasn't had an effect on the public subconscious towards eventually coming to believe in invisible, unsubstantiated nonsense as scientific doesn't need to look any further than the comment section of this article alone, not to mention the numerous links you'll get that are promoting this rubbish from a simple Google search. Now, if God is a force of nature, according to pantheism, then they can simply state that life had to be complex at the molecular or cellular level for life to evolve in the first place. As time goes along, expect academia to promote this idea that the cell has a mind of its own or is inherently intelligent in their attempt to scoot around the problem they have with irreducible complexity. Mr. Darwin, one of the greatest scoffers of the Bible to ever live, stated in his book titled The Origin of Species that if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which cannot possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down, unquote. Now, understanding this, there is a theory called natural genetic engineering. The theory states that the intelligent designer or guiding intelligence behind sentient life forms is the cell itself. James Shapiro and others that promote this theory implies this, knowing full well that a cell cannot copy itself and perform the critical function of protein production without the data stored in the DNA telling it how to do so in the first place. But while it is still based on a faulty materialistic premise, this can still serve the purpose of promoting the idea that the universe is naturally intelligent, or to the idea of God being a force of nature, as a pagan would say. To James Shapiro's credit, he admits that he can only explain its mechanical effects, that being gene transfer, symbiogenesis, gene duplication, etc. He cannot explain the cause or the actual mechanical processes that takes this raw data and reshuffles it to adapt to new conditions. It's his closing statement in the article titled What Natural Genetic Engineering Does and Does Not Mean that piqued my interest and further suspicions about characters like James Shapiro, where he states that if experiments show that cells can make distinct appropriate NGE responses to different adaptive challenges occurs, we need to figure out how they do so. This almost certainly will prove to be more than a strictly mechanical process. How do cells carry out their computations to make useful goal-oriented responses? A successful answer to that question will certainly involve cybernetics. If such investigations take evolution science into areas that are more than strictly material, so be it. As long as we stay within the realm of natural processes, there are no boundaries on what science can address, unquote. This is the same type of response he gave to creation scientist William Debsky about the origins of this process he calls natural genetic engineering. He stated that, quote, where they come from in the first place is not a question we can realistically answer right now, unquote. Now, one would consider such statements to be a bit of an oxymoron. He states that we should limit our observations to the realm of natural processes, even if it exceeds the limits of the strictly material. Such statements make no sense in of itself until you realize that it will likely be dark matter that will be given as the ultimate cause of this process. As I stated earlier in this video, the explanation will be similar to Qui-Gon Jinn's explanation of the Force in Star Wars Episode 1. They will claim that there is a fifth element, or divine spark, as a New Ager would say, a ghostly cloud of invisible matter, particles that binds the cosmos together and resides within all living cells. This brings us full circle back to the atomist religions of ancient Greek, where a similar idea was taught that there is an infinite number of atoms bouncing off of each other aimlessly in space, until some become entangled with each other in accordance with their shapes and sizes, resulting in the formulation of matter. The atom, according to them, is the designer. This is why Christians who promote intelligent design must be absolutely certain with themselves in what they mean by design, as the term can mean something entirely different to the world. To the world, it is natural selection, mutations, the cell, heat, the atom, extraterrestrials, and the essence of the universe itself that are the intelligent designers.
I find my zenith doth depend on a most auspicious star. Miranda, Miranda, your greatest adventure still lies ahead. You've delved into books. You've seen for yourself humanity's shining, limitless possibilities. You've sailed away in search of that light and observed the wonders of science and the universe. And now, your next step. Be yourself. Be who you truly are, and help to change the world. For all of us here.
I've beaten the maze. I've come through the storm. Come on. One final step. Our greatest adventure
still lies ahead.
McKellen was quoting from The Tempest when he said, I find my zenith doth depend on the most auspicious star. We'll see where that most auspicious star is going to go now.
The Large Hadron Collider at CERN is the largest, most complex machine in the world, possibly the universe. By smashing particles together at enormous energies, it recreates the conditions of the Big Bang. The recent discovery of what looks like the Higgs particle is a triumph of human endeavor, an international collaboration. It will change our perception of the world, and has the potential to offer insights into a complete theory of everything.
Hello to you out there in normal land. You may not comprehend my tale or understand. As I could past your window, give me lucky looks. You can be my buddy, but you'll never read my books. I'm Spartacus, 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 Autisticus. I'm Spartacus, 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 Autisticus. I'm Spartacus, 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 Autisticus. Nubbled on the cobbles and I hobble when I wobble. When? Get up, get up, get up, get down, fall over. Whoa! So place your heart and bring that to my tin. And thank the Creator, you're not in the state I'm in. So long reviving language on its shell. I must give all proceedings to myself. I'm Spartacus! 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 Autisticus! Spartacus! 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 Autisticus! Spartacus! 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 Autisticus! I'm double on the bubbles, double when I wobble. Yeah!
And so the sculpture is a large-scale reproduction of Mark Quinn's Alison Lapper Pregnant.
Miranda, the time has come. Look up and fly. Break that glass ceiling and set us all free.
So Miranda symbolically there, breaking the glass ceiling.
It has been discussed in numerous articles that dark matter is indeed the Peter Higgs boson particle, or God particle as it's boastfully called, that the scientific establishment has been looking for with CERN's Large Hadron Collider, a machine that has garnered the suspicions of many over the years for various reasons, and they plan on starting this machine again sometime in 2015. This God particle has been described as the most sought after in modern physics, as its discovery will herald a new paradigm shift, so they say, giving us a complete understanding of the universe we live in. Some would like us to believe that dark matter and this God particle are two different things, but they are the same thing the way I see it, as both are described in similar ways, and just like dark matter, this God particle only exists in the minds of the heathen to make the Big Bang Theory work, which is why I now find this Hadron Collider to be highly suspect. Now, I'll replace the terms the Force and midichlorians with dark matter from the Star Wars video I played earlier, and you'll get an idea of the type of scientific babblings we can expect to hear as time goes along from the origin of everything. Master, sir, I've been wondering, what is dark matter? Well, Anakin, dark matter is a microscopic subatomic particle that resides within all living cells and is the very essence of the cosmos. They live inside of me. Inside your cells, yes. And we are symbionts with dark matter. Symbionts? Life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without dark matter, life cannot exist. It would have no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force. They do? Well, Anakin, when you learn to quiet your mind through transcendental meditation and by practicing the occult, you will hear them speaking to you. I don't understand. Well, Anakin, if you just take this mark in your right hand or forehead, it will completely open you up at the cellular level, allowing you to harness this dark energy that resides within you. You'll begin to hear it speaking to you, feel it coursing through your body, giving you the power to become immortal like us, knowing the very nature of good and evil, like a god. What we're being prepared for are outright replacements of sound biblical doctrine. Just like E.T. will be the replacement for angels, materialist beliefs in things like dark matter will serve as the replacement for devils, the powers of heaven, and God himself. I'm certain that something like this will end up being the God of forces, the Antichrist, while honoring the temple. Satan, the God of forces, as the prophet Daniel calls him, will be pawned off as a force of nature in the very essence of the universe. This will give the Antichrist the platform to present himself as an alien that evolves into a godlike being from another planet while presenting his miracles as completely natural, with no supernatural implications, to keep the Bible out of the picture. He will exalt himself as God, as the Bible states, just not a supernatural one. He will be presented as the absolute pinnacle of evolution for the world to strive for. This will make the mark of the beast more acceptable to the world, as long as it's promoted within this framework that can be summed up as a combination of New Age mysticism and reductionist materialism. One of the last warnings that the Apostle Paul gave to Timothy was to, quote, lay a good foundation for the time to come, and to keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and oppositions of science, falsely so called. It has become quite evident to me that he wrote this because the Antichrist, which he refers to in 2 Thessalonians as the son of perdition, will deceive the world primarily by posing as a champ, the shining beacon of what is presented as established science.